And we have Ms. Christy Abraham, who is supposed to present on the policy brief. As you are aware, the policy brief has been received already. It was emailed, a copy of the policy brief was emailed to us. If you check your emails, those who are on the circulation lists. But those of you who are not on the list, at least will have this PowerPoint presentation. Over to you, Madam Christy Abraham. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alec. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants from Africa and also from the Africa Network, from the Global Network, and from the Indian Forum on Rehabilitation and Assistive Technology. Sue Enfield and myself had the privilege of writing this policy brief for IFRA, and we were guided continuously by Winky and Gautam to develop this paper, and we are extremely grateful for this opportunity as well as for the guidance that we received. In fact, for me, it's an honor to present this policy brief to the respected leaders and colleagues from Africa who have expertise and experience in the field of rehabilitation. Okay, so one of the major points which came up both from Winky's presentation and when all the network people are saying, why is community-based rehabilitation absent in the WHO resolution for the highest standards of people with disabilities? And what can activists, what can experts, what can grassroots, implementers, people with disabilities do to ensure that community-based rehabilitation is an integral part of the WHO resolution? What we are saying is not just only based on the policy brief that is written down here, it's based on intense and immense experiences of people over the last 30 years doing community-based rehabilitation work and doing a lot of policy advocacy. The policy brief adds to the discourse which is already going on and hope that it will help all of us to achieve what we want to achieve. So the first slide is about the need for rehabilitation. The Global Burden of Disease Study 2019, the report states that 2.41 billion individuals, or 1 out of 3 people, that is 33% in the world, require habilitation and rehabilitation. And this is based on a study done on the consequences of 25 diseases and illnesses. And it was done in 204 countries. So based on that, the statistics was arrived at. It says that rehabilitation is required by most people at some point of time when they go through an illness or a disease. But not even 50% of those people who require those rehabilitation receive those services. And the increase in the number of people requiring rehabilitation between 1990 and 2019 has been 63%. And this rise in this people who need rehabilitation, as we all know, is because of various reasons such as war, poverty, violence, environmental degradation, non-communicable diseases, and accidents, a lot of other things which has contributed to this increase in rehabilitation. So what we are trying to tell is that rehabilitation is required not only by people with disabilities, by a large number of people, not just the 15%, but almost 33% of the people require rehabilitation. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, when it comes to people with disabilities, all of us know that 15% or 1 in every 7 person is a person with disability. We, while writing the policy paper, has been very much looking at the lower and middle income countries. And we found that the majority of the people with disabilities in LMIC countries live below the poverty line. In fact, the figure is almost 80% of the 15% are people who live below the poverty line. Many of them are homeless, and a large number of them are also in institutions. Because of the fact that, they are institutionalized or they are on homeless and on the streets, and otherwise also there has been denial of access to health, education, livelihoods, and overall inclusion of people with disabilities into the mainstream. If you really look at it, almost 3.8% of the 15% are people with severe, very severe disabilities. So in such a situation, we all need to really think about how do we ensure that people with very severe disabilities, people who are institutionalized or people who are homeless or people who are otherwise living below the poverty line will get access to rehabilitation or the higher standards of health. How will they receive and what can we do about it? We need to really impress upon the leaders about these statistics and the various discrimination. What we found is that the major reason for also people not receiving this is the discrimination that continue to exist in society, in the system. When we talk about society, we are not only talking about the people, but in the system itself, which denies people access to the basic rights what people are supposed to get. So that is the most important aspect of it. Next slide, please. We looked at the various frameworks that has been in place, or that has been put in place. Venki very clearly said, WHO has been doing quite a lot of work to promote the rights of people with disabilities. So when we looked at it, we know that in September 1978, there was the Alma-Ata Declaration, which said that the world needs primary health care system that promotes community health care in every country. The need for connecting the people beyond the hospitals, beyond the biomedicals, and it should include human rights. This is what the Alma-Ata Declaration said in 1978. Is it really happening? Also, in the 40th anniversary celebrations of the WHO Declaration was the Astana Declaration in 2018, where again they reinforced the need for primary health care at the community level, connecting with people and providing the health care required for people at the community level. We also would like to bring the attention of the resolution WHA 58.23 on disability, which came up in 2005, which spoke about the need for the link between disability and poverty, disability and war, disability and injuries and accidents. So that connect what I said earlier of the large number of people requiring rehabilitation was brought up in the resolution WHA 58.23, and it very clearly said that there has to be inclusive, there has to be inclusive facilitation. And the people, very clearly the resolution talks about who are these people who are worst affected by all these, whether it is poverty or environmental degradation. It very clearly says women. It talks about children. It talks about people with severe disabilities, people who are affected through injuries by landmines. It talks about even domestic violence. So there are multiple factors which make people or who are impacted by disability in differential terms, and we need to highlight that. And while the resolution talks about providing inclusive support for all these groups of people, it is really not happening at all, and that is what we need to stress upon. Then came UNCRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I do not have to talk to anyone about it. Or, I mean, I certainly don't think on any of these aspects. However, UNCRPD is the Bible for the people for the last, since 2006. People have been talking about it, and it has led to the passing of legislations around disability in many of the countries, and which has given a tool in our hands to continue to negotiate with our governments and get the rights for people. The WHO framework on integrated people-centered health services came up in 2016. And it talks about the health system should be for people. It talks about universal health coverage, as all of us know. And it talks about health is not for diseases, because people, there are certain diseases. It's not only for COVID-19. It talks about health for all, it talks about universal health coverage, and the health systems in the countries should be developed and it should be made available to the people. It also talks that Ministry of Health should take on the rehabilitation needs of the people. Healthcare should be, but in many of the countries, when we look at it, it is rehabilitation or disability is still considered a welfare agenda, and it is maybe put under some other ministries where there is much lesser investment going into those ministries for disability, for rehabilitation. So that needs to be also addressed. We then have the Rehabilitation 2030 call for action, which came up in 2017. I'll take you through the very salient features of that a little later, but this is what currently we are in. It is the 2030 call for action. 10 more years are there for the entire Rehabilitation 2030 action to be implemented. It is in the hands of the governments of the various countries to implement it. And then we have the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda. The UN SDGs has got disability as a cross-cutting agenda. And the UN SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, it very clearly says that the target 3 is focused on healthcare. For the policy paper also, I just would like to tell you that we focused on health, not on the various other aspects of community-based rehabilitation, though it has 5 pillars. Our focus was on the health pillar because this particular resolution is also focused on health. And when we look at the target 3.8, it says that there should be access to promotive, preventive, curative, rehabilitative, and palliative care for people. And it should be sufficient and it should be effective without financial hardships for the people. And the UN SDG has come out with a very focused report on disability. And if you look at the report, it shows that in all these areas, people with disabilities are lagging behind very adversely, which needs to be addressed. And so how do we contribute towards people, all of us or people in the field are doing a lot of work. However, it is important to connect with these frameworks and the larger discourse that is happening in the world so that people understand and it really become a people-centric resolution as well as people-centric framework and policies. And it's a responsibility of all of us to ensure that we contribute to all this. So if you look at it, what I want to again bring, I was looking through we were both looking at the Sustainable Development Goals report, and it says that 90% of the people, I did not mention about the resolution 71.8, which is very specifically passed on assistive technology. So that resolution, as well as the UN SDG report, says that 90% of the people who require assistive technology does not receive it, which means only 10% of the people who require assistive technology. We said earlier that 3.8% of the people of the 15% are people with very severe disabilities. So people who need it, majority of them are not getting it. Another resolution, WHO resolution 66.9 says that there needs to be coordinated global action plan. If rehabilitation 2030 has to be achieved, whether sustainable development goals has to be achieved, in any of these cases, there has to be resolutions passed saying, informing the governments, telling the governments, mandating the governments for coordinated global actions so that many of these targets are achieved. Yet another resolution is going to be passed. So all these parallel or, multiple resolutions are passed. There are larger frameworks. However, the goal of rehabilitation for all still remains a distant dream for many of the people with disabilities in lower and middle income countries. In fact, SDG 10, which looks at the inequality gap, it very, very clearly says people with disabilities, if you look at the inequality gap between people with disabilities and other people in poverty, in healthcare, the gap is actually 50%. So there are global documents very clearly by UN or what you say, the group of WHO and all those, they themselves have come out with documents where there is evidence. So even when there is evidence, what is stopping from? So maybe the lack of evidence that community-based rehabilitation is one of the methodologies that can certainly lead to achievement of all these actions, achievement of all these frameworks is maybe that is what we as people who are working on the ground will have to stress upon. Next slide, please. Okay. When we looked at what has worked in the last many years, what approaches have worked in the last many years, we have found that the task shifting approach has really worked so that people in rural areas, people in severe disabilities have access to some form of rehabilitation. Some of the examples that we have was that in the case of non-communicable diseases, WHO endorses that a lot of screening and the basic requirements of people with non-communicable diseases can be handed over to a group of people who are trained for this purposes and who can provide the services required. Because as we all know, one of the biggest gap is in actually professionals. Like assistive technology, there is a lack of healthcare professionals across the globe, particularly in lower and middle income countries. The report will have the exact figure. There is a huge task. There is a huge gap of healthcare professionals, various types of professionals. In our own countries, we know about the gap of the physiotherapists, whether it's occupational therapists, whether it is, doctors, pediatric doctors, neurologists, psychologists. There's a huge gap in healthcare professionals. So how do we address this gap? The second is the cost involved. The cost involved in providing the care to people is very high, though primary health care, as well as the previous declaration talks about, as even UNSDG talks about, providing it with limited financial burden. It's the high burden that people have to bear, not only for the medical expenses, but even to reach across to these hospitals and care providers who are always in urban areas, urban settled people. So one of the ways of handling this is task shifting and training people so that they take on some aspects of rehabilitation. And some good examples, like as I said earlier, was found in WHO has endorsed it for the non-communicable diseases. World Bank has come and driven the community-driven development strategy, where you say work with the local governments, not even with national governments, work with the or state government in a federal state like India where we come from, but work with the local governments, build local systems which will be more sustainable. So that is something which has been working. Similarly, the International Red Cross has been also, there are various examples. All of us also know that from CBR there are examples, but here we also looked at, other than in community-based rehabilitation, are there methodologies in similar fashion which is working? And we found that even Red Cross has been using community volunteers to promote community health, community first aid, etc. Particularly, Red Cross works in war-torn countries. So you need to reach out to people with first aid at, immediately. So they have been training people. So there has been many examples that community-based programming, community-based healthcare will certainly work in the case of some of these diseases. In our report, we have also quoted the eye care in Rwanda as an example. I hope there is somebody from Rwanda where people are trained. There is 3-year ophthalmic training is being provided, and it addresses almost 1,250 people. Healthcare nurses has been trained particularly on. So the generalists are trained on ophthalmic care, and with their support, they've been able to reach out to a lot of people with problems with vision as well as visual impairment itself. So let us move to community-based rehabilitation. So as we all know, community-based rehabilitation, particularly I'm confident that the people who are sitting today and listening to us are part of the community-based rehabilitation process over the years. But I have to say that we found that though there are in real practices good programs, there are very few researched, published, examples of community-based rehabilitation becoming very, very effective. I think both the planners, the people who make the design, as well as the implementers are responsible. Just as we are doing the program, it's very, very important to actually share the information and provide it in a more researched fashion so that it is easy for policymakers to pick it up, not as an ad hoc development which has happened in one part of Africa, but as a program which has been continuously going on with investment and which has brought changes in the lives of the people. Next slide, please. In CBR, we have found that we all know that the CBR guidelines came up in 2010, though CBR has been implemented for many years. But currently there are evidences of 90 countries out of the 240 countries, 90 countries implementing CBR, and but mostly in we are talking about low and middle income countries. And CBR has also used the same methodology of task sharing. We know that the community-based rehabilitation workers are trained in multiple skills. When we looked at the skills, they are trained in about 22 skills, are pushed into the CBR worker who goes into the community and provides support using the skills and transferring that skill further to the carers or the parents of people with disabilities or to persons with disabilities directly. So task shifting has something which CBR has been doing through trained people who are trained, and there are a lot of people sitting here who are also trainers who have completely invested their lives in training people. But some of the best characteristics of community-based rehabilitation, which all of us should push through, is that in a place where data is not available, where people are saying we don't even know whether people with disabilities are there, any CBR program, what they've been able to achieve was that help the regular health workers in screening and identification, and they themselves actually identifying people with disabilities. And in a population where community-based rehabilitation is implemented, every person is identified. Different ways of identification, but it's very, very important to count the people so that, you know, it matters and there is investment based on the numbers, which CBR could do. Second is that it facilitated inclusion. Inclusion is something which we've been hearing since UNCRPD came into action. A lot of people talk about it, but even before that, even before UNCRPD came, we have shown to the people that CBR is purely people-centric. It is done very locally with, it can only be facilitated by groups of people, of different stakeholders coming together and working together, and people with disabilities themselves take a lead in this. It is jointly operated in most of the places by the government, NGO, and the organizations of people with disabilities. In many places, it has led to the formation of people's organizations who negotiate with the government, who help the governments to design the programs required. It is not that they just demand and access the entitlements, but they are an integral part of actually designing the program that is required for the people and playing a role bigger than just becoming beneficiaries. The ownership of the CBR program are by persons with disabilities, and when there is overall participation, it has been seen very clearly that people who have been fortunate to be part of any of the CBR programs, the overall well-being of people with disabilities has been enormous. So how do we ensure that if well-being of people is on the agenda of the global policy makers, certainly CBR is one way. CBR is affordable, CBR is cost effective, it is empowering, and it is more sustainable. So there is enough evidence from the reports and from the stories that we have seen to influence the government, the WHO, and the resolution using some of this information and our own experiences that is available. Next slide, please. Moving forward, actually, we have put together the asks, but those asks will be actually, presented by Lily and Caroline, I think. But before that, this is just to remind all of us again about the Rehab 2030 call for action. It very clearly says leadership and political support is required for rehabilitation. That is the most important aspect. Political support and leadership, rehabilitation planning and implementation in emergency response, health sector integration, inclusion in universal health coverage, comprehensive service delivery model, multidisciplinary rehabilitation workforce, financing rehabilitation, data using the classification of functions, international classification of functionalities, building research capacity, strengthening networks and partnerships. Now, these are the major points. The 2030 call for action says that all the countries will have to do if they have to achieve the rehabilitation for all. And but we know where we are. The UNSDG reports and various reports talk about the big gap that is currently there for people with disabilities. And let us do our best. And